Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this segment is going to go directly on YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, first of all, hi and welcome. My name is Alexander, also known as Sandrievitz, and before going to the topic for this video, don't forget after watching this that you definitely need to like, subscribe, and comment upon it, whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts that I'm about to explain. And the topic of today's video is the following: how good Wind Druid is when it comes to leveling on a Hell difficulty. Now, just like with previous difficulties, I'm not going to talk too much about the gearing aspect, whether or not like a character is more powerful or less powerful with or without the gear. I will leave this aspect aside. So I, just like with other characters and with other difficulties, going to talk about skills. Skills that will help you, skills that you will rely upon, their mechanics, their effectiveness on the individual difficulty, and how good or how bad they are. Now, as far as the Tornado Druid goes, or Wind Druid, call it however you want, let's start from Elemental Tree, because major parts of your playstyle will come from this tree, naturally. Now, Arctic Blast, this is just a filler. I mean, you put 1 point to unlock the Cyclone Armor, so I'm going to ignore it. Even though they will say that they're going to buff this in the next patch. We shall see how, but for now I'm ignoring it. Cyclone Armor. Those 3 spirits that are whirling around you. What can I say about Cyclone Armor on Hell difficulty? Now, it's great against elemental attacks. It, like Fire, Cold, and Lightning, like it is indicated, it will allow you to sustain a lot more damage than you would want, than you would have not sustained otherwise without this thing activated. And the practical application for the spell is it will allow you to survive such dangerous types of enemies like Lost Souls, Burning Souls, Black Souls, whatever type of souls, as well as go toe-to-toe with such enemies like Black Knights in Act 4 and Dark Knights in Chaos Sanctuary, which is why I think that because of this, this character is very good for farming such places, even without best in slot gear. Now, as far as is it like really reliable or less reliable, I would say that against magical attacks, it's very good instrument because the amount of absorption that it gives you, it's way exceeds something that Bone Armor gives you. Bone Armor gives you like physical damage absorption. This one gives you this one gives you elemental. But the thing about this spell, like one negative, not necessarily this spell as a whole, just general damage type of this game. Like you are not going to encounter too often elemental damage types. You know what I mean? In comparison to physical damage type, elemental damage type, yeah, it's there, but it's not the predominant one. So, because of the nature of this class also as a whole, just in general being a close-range caster, it's hard for me to say that, you know, with Cyclone Armor you would feel like somehow invincible, because, you know, some enemies, they can have elemental damage types, but they're also going to be a very dangerous melee enemies, like Minotaurs, for instance, in X5, and so I cannot say that stuff like, oh, just cast Bone Armor upon yourself and go in melee range with them, and if you are surrounded, then you will going to survive. Most likely not the case. This tool is good against like pure casters or like some hybrids, but the ones that are not dangerous when it comes to melee damage. So, which is why I will say that this skill is good against any like elemental effects, but since elemental effects are not the predominant damage type in Diablo 2, I cannot say it's like superb or excellent. From my opinion, I still would have preferred to use physical damage absorption, but that's just my opinion. Now let's move on to the next spell. Next spell is Twister, and what can I say about the Twister? It's trash. Well, okay, jokes aside, this skill is just a filler. This skill, you will max it out just because it will give you... Just because it's a synergy that gives 10% more damage boost, both to your... Wait, I'm reading it wrong. So this Twister receives bonuses. So you would want to max out Twister because it gives 9% bonus to your Tornado, which is your main offensive spell. You would not want to use Twister because the damage, even if you will see in my case, even if this skill is maxed out, like 28 here and 28 here, this does almost like 3k, like 2.9k until 3k damage. This does like what, 600. And it's the same damage type, the same physical damage type, so it's pointless. Yes, it covers a wider range, but you will not going to use it. It stuns your enemies, you know, but the stun duration isn't the greatest either, and also in comparison to, like, if you want to compare skills, in comparison to like Assassin's Mind Blast. So it's just a synergy spell. Filler synergy spell, you would need to max it out, but you will not going to use it. Moving on to the next spell, and your main offensive spell, one of your main offensive spells to that matter, Tornado. What can I say about Tornado? It's as I expected from second part of Nightmare difficulty, where I started to play with Tornado Druid. The best description that I can give you, the best like analysis of the spell, it's clunky. It's not the most damaging spell. Like if I would compare this to, let's say, a fully maxed out Bone Spirit or a fully maxed out Blizzard, it's not the most damaging spell, number one, and number two, it's clunky. Clunky to the point, let me actually demonstrate it to you, where you're going to try to attack the enemies. Like, let's say, let's pretend that this torch is an enemy. You will try to attack it. Sometimes Tornado, yes, sometimes it will directly hit it, but sometimes even standing like this, it will pass, or it will be created in any other random direction then, and you will not be able to hit your main target. So that's number one. Number two, it doesn't cover that much range, meaning that, you know, with Bone Spirit I also talked about it, that it's a spell that has a limited range, but at least it can be fired from one screen to the next screen while still penetrating the enemies, like everything that stands on its way. With Tornado spell you can do the same thing, you know? It can pass through the enemies while damaging them at the same time. But the range, it's so limited, like, and it's also susceptible, like, if it hits the wall, it disappears, sometimes if it hits any kind of obstacle, it disappears, so... It's clunky, it's hard to get used to, it's clunky, it does decent damage, but... You would have to stay in a close range or in a medium range with your target to be able to hit them, and you know, you cannot. I can't say that you can't control it. You know what I mean? Like, if I don't know if you know, but with Hammer Paladin, you know, Hammer Paladin always creates hammers from his left hand, like they are spinning like this, and they are circling and circling and circling. But with this guy, no matter where your cursor is on the screen, Tornado that he's creating, yes, he creates Tornado in the direction where he looks at, but where they actually appear and where they move afterwards, it's totally different beast. And because you cannot reliably, yes, that's the correct word, reliably hit your targets with the Tornado, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes, this is why the best description that I can give the skill is like clunky. It's very clunky, hard to get used to. I'm not saying like it's bad or like unplayable. All I'm saying it's it's so like you would have to constantly maneuver your character, constantly move him slightly closer or slightly far away, or to the left, to the right from the enemies to hit the targets. So yeah, that's that. The other side of the coin of the Tornado. why I'm not terribly excited about the spell. It's something that has to do with Hurricane, but I'll get to Hurricane next. It's whenever you get physical immune, because your tornado offers you your tornado in this build is like 60 to 70% of your whole damage output. Whenever you get physical immune, yeah, you're going to be stuck there for a while. Your Hurricane will eventually kill the enemies unless you will get both immune to cold and immune to physical, which can happen. Yes, it can happen. But all I'm trying to say is that because there is no, you know, like with Bone, Necro, you have magical damage, and once you encounter magical immunities, you can just use Corpse Explosion. And I don't think that there had been like both like physical immune and magical immune, but regardless, whenever you encounter any physical immune enemy, your clear speed slows down to the crawl, to the point where he becomes it's even slower than dual element sorcerers. You know, I played with dual element sorcerers like Frozen Orb and Firewall, and Frozen Orb / Meteor. Sorceress is faster, like when it comes to killing the enemies with that has immunities to one element type and you just attack them with the other, Sorceress is way faster. Druid, it's the slowest again, and because the tornado is like very clunky and hard to get used to, even if you are casting it directly from point blank, it could miss sometimes or bypass the enemies. I am not terribly excited about I wasn't terribly excited about the spell, and I'm still not totally impressed by it. It's not something mind-blowing from my point of view. So it's alright. At the end of the day, it's a good enough spell, all I can say. Now let's move on to the Hurricane, which is this thing. What can I say about Hurricane? That's your secondary offensive spell. So Tornado, it's like 60 to 70% of your damage. Hurricane is like good 30%. What can I say about Hurricane on Hell difficulty? Well, because there's a lot of cold immunes out there, without having the access to Infinity, which is something that I currently lacking, your damage is always going to be suboptimal. Like, it's either you face enemies that don't have physical and cold immune and you kill them relatively quickly, not super fast but relatively quickly, or your Hurricane, everything that it will do, it will just stagger enemies. Like, the stagger effect is always going to be there. Even the enemies that have cold immune, if you create a Hurricane, once they are approaching your field and stepping inside this wind, not field, but this the Hurricane itself, when they are stepping inside, they will stagger, they will be stopped, their charge will be prevented, and so on and so forth. So the stagger is there. The damage, yeah, like, it's in combination, like, if you will summarize, like, you can say, well, wait, 3k here, and then like 2, and then like almost 1.5k, 1.4k, 1.5k here, you'll probably have great damage. Not really, once again, because first of all, enemies have on Hell difficulty, even though it says like your Tornado is doing like 2.9 until 3k damage, enemies on Hell difficulty have a lot of physical damage resistance, meaning that your damage will not be on the same level. That's number one. And number two, when it comes to Hurricane, because there's a lot of cold immune out there, once again your damage is going to suffer. So that's that. I cannot say anything bad about the staggers. I already talked about this aspect. But visually, like I have told you before, excuse me, visually the spell could have been more fleshed out, like they did with older graphics. Let me actually close it and show you. This is Hurricane with older graphics, this is Hurricane with newer graphics. It's hard to notice it sometimes. Well, I guess in the midst of the battle it's hard to notice whether or not it deals damage to the enemies or not. And visually it could have been more fleshed out from my point of view. So that's when it comes to Hurricane. And what's next? Nothing in shapeshifting, summoning. Now as for summoning, all you wanna pick up from here, it's Oak Sage to get the boost for your life, both flat in a flat and in a percent number. And summon Grizzly. Now when it comes to Oak Sage, the buff that it provides, the buff that increases your life, it's great. I will not say anything bad about it. The one thing I will say that... Oh, and also one other good thing, it's like good and bad, this is also another target that enemies are focusing their attention upon. Meaning that you can use it as a distraction until you want to reposition yourself, reposition your Merc, resummon your Grizzly, and so on and so forth. But there is a severe drawback in my opinion. This little spirit has a nasty habit of simply wanders around, like wandering around, which can lead to attracting more enemies that you would want to fight. So he just, you know, there's going to be like a battle, you will going to like cast your spells, like focus certain enemies, etc. And the spirit is going to just casually like float around to the other side of the screen, aggro another pack of monsters, maybe even elite ones, maybe even minotaurs or lasdos. They will gonna kill him in seconds, and yes, the next afterwards they will going to charge directly at you and at your summons, at your Merc and at your summons that are leftovers, you know, something like this. I don't know why they did not make his pattern of movement the same as Grizzly, for instance, because when you summon Grizzly, he doesn't... Yes, he is moving slightly away from you, but only slightly. And he doesn't just likes to wander around when there's like no enemies, or vice versa, when there's like battle that is going on. Maybe that's because the Oak Spirit cannot attack, but it's still weird in my opinion. At least from my point of view, I would have preferred that the Oak Spirit would not float around that far away from your character or from the battle just in general. So that's the only negative thing that I could say about this Oak Spirit, to be honest. Oak Sage. Now, as far as Grizzly goes, what can I say about Grizzly? If I'm going to compare him to the Bone Golem, even on Hell difficulty, he's tankier. Like, he's way he can withstand way more punishment and general damage in comparison to the Bone Golem. Yes, he doesn't have his aura, you know, that slows down the enemies, but from my experience, his charge attack, you know, that he does when he knocks the target away, and when it also staggers them, charge attack can be as good, if not better, but it's a good replacement for this. Because he is doing this, Grizzly is doing this charge attack constantly, and it can work even against... It doesn't work against bosses, but it can work even against dangerous elite monsters, preventing casters, you know, from hitting you with spells, preventing enemies like Minotaurs from hitting you with double swing or frenzy. So this is a great summon, from my opinion. Now, do I still think that you would want to put points, like spare points, into the summon Grizzly later down the line if you want to level your character up until level 99? I still don't think so. I think bonus skill points that you are receiving from your gear is more than enough to be able to provide you with a good tank companion and another target that enemies can focus their attention upon. I don't think that you should invest more into this unless unless there's going to be a summon build for a Druid later down the line, you know, with patch 2.4. If the summon Druid is going to become a thing in the future, you will most certainly going to utilize this spell, this summon, excuse me, because of how good it is. Like, you will not going to skip it, but only time will tell whether Summon Druid is going to become a thing. For now, I say that every spare points that you are going to receive, I think you should invest them into Oak Sage, because Oak Sage will buff your character's HP, your Grizzly's HP, your Merc HP, and so on and so forth. Whereas if you just want to put, if you would have put points into Summon Grizzly, all it does is increases its life, attack rating, and yeah, slightly increases his like damage and defense, but I treat those summons as just a target upon which enemies can focus their attention. I'm not treating them as a way, you know, to rely upon for them to do the major damage, because no matter what, the bulk of your damage always are going to come from your character, unless you're a summoner, but that's totally different thing. This is why I don't see the point why you would want to invest spare skill points into Summon Grizzly. That's that. So, as far as some kind of conclusion, what do I think of this class like as a whole? For the hell difficulty, is he viable or is he not viable? Wind Druid, for instance. Wind Druid as a whole. I'd say yes, he is definitely a viable choice. I would say that he will provide you with unique experience. Oh, wait. Speaking about the number of buttons, because some people may look at it and say, oh, wait, I don't want to play this class. You gotta press too many buttons, you know, you gotta keep, be on the lookout for where you place your summons, where you, like, you recast something and so on and so forth. Not really. To be honest, spells like Cyclone Armor have a constant 100% uptime, so you don't need to recast it unless it has been broken. Spells like Hurricane, once maxed out, it has duration of 50 seconds, which is not a lot if you think about it in comparison to the other like temporary spells, but because it has like a visual indicator and it allows you to recast it after 4 seconds of being like on a cooldown, you can pretty much spam it, just recast it once and you'll be good to go. Grizzly and Oak Sage are those that you can, like, it can be tricky to master the technique when something that I was doing, you know, summoning them right in front of elite packs and forcing those elite packs to attack them instead of myself or my Merc. But it's easy because they don't have any cooldowns. Like, look, just summon, resummon, summon, resummon, and so on and so forth. Even if they are killed, you can do this pretty much, well, constantly until you have, like, if you have enough mana to do so. So it's not, this class is not super hard to play any whatsoever. It's just, when it comes to Tornado, it's either you're going to like it or you're going to hate it, like, or you're going, because of how clunky it is. I have played a similar type of build, like in Grim Dawn. I already talked about it, where Tornadoes were, again, also having the mind of their own, and they were slow-ish. But here, it's also a clunky, but in a different way, because like he creates it and they are flying in random directions, so that's that. But I cannot say that this character is like hard to play from the point of, you know, micromanaging or macromanaging some of your spells. That's pretty much it. And at the end of the day, if you also have teleportation staff or Enigma, it's like one extra button, but it's not hard. So, in conclusion, Tornado Druid, totally viable to complete hell difficulty even if you don't have Bastion slot gear. Totally viable to get through the content from the beginning until the end. It's not, from my personal point of view, if I'm going to compare this class to Bone Necro, do I like him better than Bone Necro and Sorceress? I wouldn't say so, simply because of the fact that this aspect of when you don't have Enigma, your Hurricane damage doesn't even exist, and there's a lot of cold immunes out there, and you have to rely on this clunky Tornado to do the work for you. It's not, for me, he's not the worst. I mean, he's not the worst class in the game, but outside of those classes that I have played with, Bone Necromancer and Sorceress, he takes the last spot. Because I expected a little bit more from close range caster, you know, but that's just my problem, you know, your expectations are your own problem, something like this. He's not bad, he's good for what he's offering to you, but from my point of view, from my personal experience, things could have been better. Even for him, things could have been better, but that's already topic for the other day. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be it when it comes to this segment for the video. Once again, if you enjoyed the discussion, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, like, click the notification bell on if you don't want to miss out on any of the future videos. And from my point of view, from my part, I am done with Tornado Druid leveling part. So see you in the next videos.